for leaving my wedding after my in-laws demanded I bark like a dog? The car stopped in front of the majestic modernist house in the Pacific Heights neighborhood of San Francisco. It was the Callahan family home. I took a breath. Beside me, Nathan squeezed my hand. "Calm down, Brooke, everything will be fine," he murmured. His smile was a small beacon of calm. Hours earlier we had gotten married at the courthouse. Everything simple, beautiful. This was the trial by fire, the introduction to the family. Eleanor, my new mother-in-law, opened the door. Impeccable, cold, her gaze scrutinized me mercilessly. "Come in," she said with a voice that did not invite joy. The foyer was enormous, silent. It smelled of antique furniture and cut flowers. Vanessa, Nathan's sister, was waiting by the fireplace. Her red dress was a war cry. She smiled, but her eyes were made of ice. "The bride," she exclaimed with false sweetness. "Welcome to the clan, Brooke." "Thank you," I replied. I noticed the tension in Nathan's arm. Eleanor intervened. "Before any celebration there is a ritual. A generations-old family tradition for the new wife." Nathan frowned. "What tradition, Mom? You had not told me anything." "It does not concern you, son. It is for her." Eleanor stared at me to demonstrate humility and loyalty, to understand her new place. Vanessa stepped forward. Her smile turned into a cruel gesture. "It is simple, Brooke. You must kneel here in the center and then bark like a faithful dog. 3 times. That is how they all did it." The silence became absolute. My ears were ringing. I looked at one, then the other. I looked for a sign that it was a macabre joke. There was none. Only Eleanor's icy expectation and the obscene enjoyment in Vanessa's eyes. "No." The word left my lips before I could think about it. "I will not do it. It is outrageous. It is the tradition." Vanessa shrieked. "Or do you think you are better than us? Better than my mother? Intruder." The word intruder cut through the air. Nathan went rigid. "Vanessa, enough." His voice echoed in the foyer. He addressed Eleanor with a tone filled with fury and pain. "Mom, this is unacceptable. You support this." Eleanor did not blink. "It is the custom, Nathan. Submission is the foundation of respect here. Your wife must accept it as they all did." "Never," I said, locking my gaze on hers. "Never." "Then you are not welcome," Eleanor replied with glacial serenity. "You may leave. Nathan stays. This is his house, his duty." Everything came down to that instant. I looked at my husband. His face was pale. His eyes reflected a fierce internal battle. Family loyalty, love, honor. 3 eternal seconds passed. Then Nathan took a deep breath. With calm and deliberate movements, he took off his tuxedo jacket, folded it carefully, and left it on an antique chair. The gesture was final, symbolic, it broke the mold. "Mom, we are leaving," he said. His voice was clear and calm, but every syllable was made of steel. Eleanor blinked slowly. "What?" "We are leaving. What you ask of Brooke is a vile act. And whoever insults my wife insults me." "Nathan!" Vanessa shouted indignantly. "Silence!" He ordered them without raising his voice. Then to his mother. "If this is the door to your house, I am crossing it for the last time. But you prepare yourself too, Mom." "For what?" Eleanor asked with disdain. "For the consequences," he said, simple and lethal. Then he held out his hand to me. "Brooke, let us go." I took his hand. It was strong, warm, real. I did not look back. The last image was of Eleanor, a statue of ice, and Vanessa, her face distorted with rage. The heavy door closed behind us with a dull thud that sealed a rupture. Out on the street the air was free. Nathan opened the car door. "Say nothing, let us just go," he murmured. As we drove off, I looked back at the house. In a first-floor window, a silhouette was watching us. Eleanor. It was not a goodbye, it was a declaration of war. And we had just thrown down the first challenge. The car crossed San Francisco in silence. The city lights were beginning to turn on, painting the dying afternoon in gold and orange. I looked out the window, watching the familiar streets go by that now seemed to belong to another world. I still felt the tingling of shock in my hands, the bitter taste of humiliation in my mouth. Nathan drove with a fierce concentration, his gaze fixed on the road, his knuckles still pale on the steering wheel. Where are we going? I finally asked, my voice sounding strange in the silence of the cabin. To Los Angeles, he answered without looking away from the asphalt. I have an apartment there. I rented it months ago. Just in case. Just in case. I repeated, turning to look at him. Did you know that something like this could happen? He grimaced, an expression of pain and exhaustion I had not seen on him before. I did not know about the ritual. That was new, monstrous, but I knew my mother would test your limits and mine. She always does. Controlling, humiliating. Dominating is the air she breathes in that house. That is why I prepared a way out. A place where no one would find us, where we could breathe. The idea that my husband had needed an escape plan from his own family made my blood run cold. Nathan, what on earth is going on in your family? I asked softly. That was not just bad manners, it was perverse. He took a deep breath, as if preparing to lift an enormous weight. It is the legacy of my great-grandfather Harold Callahan, the old man, the one who made the fortune. He was not just a ruthless businessman, he was a tyrant. At home he was even more so. He believed that women, especially those who entered the family through marriage, were inferior property. They needed to be broken to be molded to his whim. He paused and his voice became harsh. The ritual, kneeling, he invented that for his first daughter-in-law. They say he made her lick the dust off his boots. Over the years things softened. It turned into barking, a dark family tradition that subsequent generations perpetuated, some out of malice, others out of pure cowardice and submission. My mother Eleanor always admired old Harold. She believes that such cruelty is synonymous with strength. I listened in astonishment. It sounded like the plot of a Gothic novel, not the history of my husband's family in 21st century America. And your father? I asked. He allowed this. A flash of pain crossed his face. My father was a weak man, a ghost. He died a decade ago, but he had given up long before that. He too was a victim of old Harold as a child. The chain never broke. He looked at me for a moment. That is why, Brooke, when I met you, when I knew I wanted to spend my life with you, I also knew I had to prepare myself. Either you became another victim of the system or I had to break it. Today I have started to break it. We arrived in Los Angeles late at night. The apartment in a discreet building in the Silver Lake neighborhood was bright, modern, and completely anonymous. Nothing like the opulent and dark house in San Francisco. Upon entering, I felt an immense relief. It was a refuge. It is ours, Nathan said, leaving the keys on a table. No one knows about it, not even Michael, the family lawyer. I collapsed onto a white sofa, exhausted. The wedding dress weighed on me like armor. Nathan sat next to me, and for the first time since we had left that foyer, he hugged me tightly, burying his face in my neck. I am sorry, his muffled voice murmured. I am sorry for taking you there, for not being able to protect you sooner. Hush, I said, stroking his hair. You got me out of there. That is the only thing that matters. My phone rang. A message. I unlocked it reluctantly. It was an unknown number, but the content made it clear who sent it. Fleeing has a price, little sister-in-law. San Francisco is not that big and stray dogs always find their bone. Enjoy your honeymoon. It will not last. V. A shiver ran through me. I showed it to Nathan. His expression hardened. Vanessa wastes no time. Ignore her. Block the number. It is what she wants, to scare us. And what if it is not just a bluff? I asked, feeling a new knot of anxiety. Your family has resources. That is why we are here in a place they do not know, he said firmly. And tomorrow we will start making our move. But right now I need a moment. He got up and went to the open kitchen. While I listened to the sound of running water and the clinking of a glass, my fingers subconsciously sought the brooch I wore on the shoulder of my dress. It was an antique silver filigree piece with a small dark blue stone. A gift from Eleanor the week before. A family piece for the new family, she had said with her cold smile. At the time, I had taken it as a welcoming gesture, clumsy but well-intentioned. Now I was disgusted to touch it. I unclasped it to take it off. Handling it, I noticed something strange. The weight was slightly uneven. I examined it under the light of the lamp. The back, normally smooth, had a small and almost imperceptible seam. I pressed the edge with my fingernail. With a soft click, a tiny lid popped open. Inside there was nothing of value. Only a small black electronic circuit the size of a fingernail and a silver microbattery. I froze. I was not a jeweler. I was a telecommunications engineer. I recognized that device instantly. A highly sensitive microphone, a state-of-the-art miniaturized audio transmitter, the kind of thing used in corporate espionage or dirty family wars. "Nathan," I said, and my voice sounded flat, strange. He came back from the kitchen with 2 glasses of water. Seeing my expression and the open brooch in my hand, he stopped dead. "What is wrong, your mother?" I said, holding up the brooch so he could see inside. "Her welcome gift. I have been wearing a microphone since before the wedding." The glass of water Nathan was holding smashed against the wooden floor, shattering into pieces. The water spread like a pool of silver under the light. He approached in 2 strides and took the brooch from my hands. He examined it, and his face transformed into a mask of pure rage. "My God," he whispered. He heard everything. The weeks leading up to the wedding, our conversations at home, everything. A new level of violation opened up before us. Not just public humiliation, but a private, methodical, premeditated invasion. "Why?" I asked, feeling empty. "What did she need to listen to us for?" "For control," Nathan replied, tossing the brooch onto the coffee table as if it burned him. "To have an advantage, to know our weak points, our plans, to make sure we could never surprise her." He ran a hand through his hair in despair. "This changes everything, Brooke. She is not just an unpleasant woman with twisted traditions. She is a strategist, and she has been watching us." I looked at the glass shards on the floor, reflecting the light like broken tears. The peace of the apartment had vanished, replaced by the oppressive feeling that not even here were we completely safe. We had escaped the wolf, but we were wearing its tracker on our shoulder. "What now?" I asked. Nathan knelt in front of me, taking my hands. His gaze had recovered that steely determination I saw in the foyer. "Now we play dirty too," he said with terrifying calm, "but by our rules. Tomorrow, first thing, we buy sweeping devices, then we are going to return my mother's gift to her." And then he paused, and a spark of something darker gleamed in his eyes. "Afterward, we are going to find out what else the venerable Callahan tradition is hiding, because if there are microphones, there are secrets worth spying on, and we are going to find them." The honeymoon had ended before it began. Instead, we had embarked on a war, and the first battle, that of violated intimacy, we had just lost. But looking into my husband's eyes, I knew we would not surrender. The brooch, with its little electronic ear, lay inert on the table, a symbol of betrayal. And perhaps, if we were smart, the first clue to turn the betrayal against the one who hatched it. The call came the next morning. It was not Vanessa or Eleanor. It was Michael Bennett, the family lawyer, with a voice as neat and neutral as his tailored suit probably was. "Nathan, I am sorry to bother you at this time." A calculated pause. "An urgent family meeting has been called at your mother's request. It is regarding the will of your grandfather, Harold. Your presence and that of your wife are highly advisable." Nathan listened with the phone on speaker, his jaw clenched. We were in the Los Angeles apartment, surrounded by the remnants of our first day on the run. We had located and destroyed 2 more tiny microphones hidden in the doorframe and inside a decorative vase. The refuge no longer felt like one. A meeting. "After yesterday, Michael, do you really think it is appropriate?" Nathan asked with an icy voice. "It is precisely because of yesterday," the lawyer replied without flinching. "Your mother wishes to clear up the misunderstanding, and the terms of Harold's will contain clauses that are triggered by family events. Your marriage is one. It is of vital interest for you to attend." "Misunderstanding," I muttered, unable to contain myself. Nathan shot me a warning look. "We will be there," he finally said, "but Brooke will not leave my side." "Not for a second." "Understood," Michael concluded and hung up. The journey back to San Francisco was tense and silent. Nathan drove with fierce concentration, as if the asphalt itself were a threat. I watched the landscape speeding by, the treacherous brooch now kept in a plastic bag in my purse, like evidence of a battle that was just beginning. "Do not trust anything they say," Nathan warned me as we took the exit toward Pacific Heights. Not a single word. This meeting is a trap, but it is a trap we must attend. My grandfather's will is the key to everything: his power, his money, his influence. The Callahan house looked even more imposing under the gray morning light. The oak door opened before we knocked. This time it was not Eleanor, but a maid with a lowered gaze who led us silently to the main living room. Eleanor was waiting for us, seated in a majestic garnet velvet armchair, dressed in strict black, as if she were already in mourning. Vanessa stood by the fireplace in an emerald green dress that contrasted with her icy expression. And in a corner, next to a table with documents, was Michael, the lawyer, a thin man with precise gestures. Nathan Brooke. Eleanor did not stand up. Her voice was soft, almost mellifluous. The change was unsettling. Thank you for coming. I know that yesterday things were said with too much vehemence. Vanessa, in her zeal for our traditions, can be enthusiastic. Perhaps there was a misunderstanding. Vanessa pursed her lips but said nothing. Her eyes, fixed on me, shone with pure hatred. A misunderstanding, Mom? Nathan asked without moving from the doorway. Ordering my wife to behave like an animal is not a misunderstanding. It is a premeditated insult. Eleanor sighed. A sigh of infinite patience. Old customs sometimes seem brutal to modern eyes, but their intention was symbolic. At any rate, she made an elegant gesture with her hand. I have realized that it was a mistake, and as the matriarch of this family, I offer my apologies to Brooke. The words floated in the air, fake as toy coins. Everyone in the room knew they were worthless, but they were the script that had to be followed. And what about the will, Michael? Nathan asked, ignoring the apology and addressing the lawyer. Michael cleared his throat and picked up a leather-bound document. As you know, Harold passed away 2 years ago. His will is complex. It contains a special clause that is activated upon the marriage of the first male heir. In this case, you, Nathan. Go on, Nathan said impatiently. The main inheritance, which includes most of the properties, business shares, and the family capital, is not distributed automatically. Michael adjusted his glasses. Harold established a test, a competition, so to speak. An incredulous silence filled the room. A competition? I asked, unable to stop myself. Exactly, Mrs. Callahan, Michael said, addressing me for the first time. His tone was professional, but his eyes evaluated me with cold curiosity. Harold was a great collector of antiques. Among his most prized possessions was an object known as the blue porcelain plate, a piece of Andalusian ceramics from the 14th century of incalculable historical and sentimental value to the family. Vanessa could not contain a smile of triumph. She knew. Whatever was coming, she knew it. The will stipulates, Michael continued, that after the marriage of the main heir, his spouse, in this case Mrs. Brooke, and potentially any future spouse of other heirs, will have a period of 3 months to locate and recover said plate. Recover? Nathan asked. It is not here. The plate disappeared from the family collection decades ago. Eleanor explained with a hint of theatrical regret. Your grandfather always believed it was stolen or hidden by a family rival. The clause is his last wish. Whoever returns the plate to its rightful place, demonstrating ingenuity, dedication, and loyalty to the family memory, will be the one who inherits the bulk of the fortune. Along with their spouse, of course. The trap revealed itself in all its perverse elegance. It was not just a matter of money. It was a test designed to divide us, to make us compete, to turn us into hunters and prey. And for Eleanor and Vanessa, who knew all the secrets and family connections, it was an overwhelming advantage. And if we do not find it? I asked, looking directly at Eleanor. She offered a smile as thin as a scar. Then the inheritance is distributed differently, minimally for the main branch. The majority would go to trusts and foundations controlled by the family council, naturally chaired by me. This is madness, Nathan muttered. It is your grandfather's will, Eleanor replied firmly. Michael has the documents to prove it. The competition begins today. And what guarantees are there? I asked. That the game is fair. Eleanor opened her eyes, feigning offended innocence. Dear Brooke, it is a test of honor. I trust that all parties will act with it. I knew it was a lie. Everyone in the room knew it. At that moment, Vanessa approached carrying a silver tray with 2 glasses of sherry. To the beginning of the search, she said with a voice sweet as poison. A glass to bury the hatchet. For now. She first offered a glass to Nathan, who rejected it with a wave of his hand. Then she offered it to me. Her eyes locked onto mine. In them I saw a gleam of something expectant, triumphant. I took the glass. The amber liquid shone in the light. Something in the way Vanessa withdrew the tray, too quickly, in the tension of her fingers around the other glass, alerted me. It was not the same, or it did not contain the same thing. Eleanor watched motionlessly. Michael studied his papers, pretending disinterest. Nathan looked at me with concern. Slowly I raised the glass to my lips. Vanessa held her breath. At the last second I lowered the glass. You know, Vanessa? I said with a voice I tried to keep calm. I am thirsty but for water. Would you mind getting me a glass? This sherry is too strong for me at this hour. A flash of furious anger crossed her face. She quickly hid it with a grimace. What nonsense. It is just a sip to toast. I would prefer water, I insisted without taking my eyes off her. I will drink it, Nathan suddenly said, reaching out his hand. I am thirsty. Without thinking, instinctively, Vanessa took a step back, slightly pulling her own glass away. It was an almost imperceptible micro-gesture. But enough, right? She exclaimed, and then, realizing her mistake, forced a laugh. I mean, period. It is Brooke's glass. Do not be rude, brother. I have mine. And quickly bringing her own glass to her lips, she took a long sip, keeping her defiant gaze on me. But I had seen her protect her glass. Mine was intended for something more than toasting. As you wish, I said, and with a swift movement, I swapped my glass for the one Vanessa had just left on the tray, which was still half full. We will toast with yours then. To the family. Before she could react, I raised the glass that had been hers and took a small sip. The sherry was sweet and harsh. Vanessa turned pale. She looked at her own glass now in my hand and then the one she was holding, the one that was originally mine. Genuine panic appeared in her eyes. Wait, she shouted. But it was too late. Eleanor suddenly stood up, alert. Vanessa. Vanessa looked at her mother, then at the glass in her hand. She brought it to her nose, smelled it, and her panicked expression turned to horror. She dropped the glass. The fine crystal shattered on the marble floor, staining the Persian rug with an amber liquid. What have you done, you fool? Eleanor hissed, completely forgetting her pose as the serene matriarch. I didn't. Vanessa babbled, bringing a hand to her throat. Her eyes began to glaze over, her legs weakened. It seems the sherry has not agreed with your daughter, Eleanor, I said, leaving my glass, Vanessa's original one, untouched on the table. Perhaps she should lie down. Vanessa collapsed onto an armchair, mumbling incoherently, her gaze lost. The substance, whatever it was, acted fast. Eleanor looked first at her fainting daughter, then at me. In her eyes the mask of courtesy vanished completely, revealing a pure, deep, and ancient hatred. Get out of my house, she said with a voice that was a threat of contained rage. You have 3 months to play hunters. But remember, in this game the hunters sometimes become the prey. Nathan took my arm. You do not need to repeat it to us, Mom. We are clear on it. Let us go, Brooke. Upon leaving, the last image was of Michael, the lawyer, gathering his documents without showing the slightest emotion, and of Eleanor, kneeling next to her drugged daughter. Not with tenderness, but with an impotent fury that promised revenge. Out on the street the cool air hit my face. How did you know? Nathan asked as we hurried to the car. She protected her glass. I knew mine was tampered with. Yours probably too. They wanted to incapacitate me or you or both of us to delay us before we even started the search. Nathan nodded, his face grim. The plate, he murmured. It is a family legend. My grandfather always talked about it. He said that whoever found it would also find the truth about the family, its darkest side. So, it is not just about the inheritance, I said as I got into the car, it is about the truth, about ending this once and for all. Nathan started the engine. Yes, it is for the truth. And now, darling, the hunt has begun, and we are both the hunters and the prey. The following days were a whirlwind of feverish research. The Los Angeles apartment became our headquarters, with maps, notes, and Nathan's laptop covering the living room table. The blue porcelain plate was a ghost. There were no clear photographs, only contradictory descriptions in old family inventories, a cobalt blue earthenware plate with geometric motifs and an Arabic inscription, possibly from the 14th century. Its value was more historical than economic, but for Harold, according to the notes Nathan had rescued from his old room, it was the key to memory. Its disappearance coincided with a huge family fight, Nathan explained to me, turning the pages of a worn diary. In the late 1960s, my grandfather Harold and his younger brother Theodore had a falling out. Theodore left home taking, according to my grandfather, the soul of the family. My father believed it was a poetic way of referring to the plate. Theodore disappeared in New Orleans. The trail is lost there. New Orleans, I murmured, marking the city on the unfolded map. 3 months is not much time. No, Nathan confirmed with a frown. And we are not alone in the search. Vanessa, recovered from her humiliation and her supposed indisposition, had not wasted time. Through the few family contacts who were still loyal to us, we learned that she had hired a private investigator of dubious reputation and was asking questions in the dark antique market of San Francisco. The Cold War had escalated. It was then that I remembered Julian Forrester, an eccentric antiquarian and expert in historical ceramics whom I had met at a conference years ago. He was a meticulous, obsessive man who distrusted great fortunes. He lived in the historic district of Santa Barbara, but his network of contacts was legendary. It is a risk, Nathan said when I suggested contacting him. We do not know whose side he is on. He is on no side other than that of authentic pieces, I replied. And he loves mysteries. If anyone has heard rumors of a plate like this, it is him. I called from a burner phone. The conversation was cryptic, full of veiled references. Julian did not ask why I was looking for the plate, only how I described it. When I mentioned the Arabic inscription, there was a silence on the other end of the line. There are rumors, he finally said in a quiet voice. Not of a plate, but of a fragment, part of a batch of problematic objects that left a private collection in San Francisco decades ago. The trail leads to a convent, not a mosque, to the Descalces Poor Clares in Santa Barbara. There they keep among their liturgical treasures things older than their order, things bequeathed to them by powerful families, sometimes to hide them. I cannot say more over the phone. It was a tenuous lead, but the only one we had. The next day we were on the road to Santa Barbara. The tension was palpable. Every car that got too close, every motorcycle that sped by put us on alert. The threat of Vanessa, and especially of Eleanor, was like a black cloud following our car. Santa Barbara welcomed us with the scorching sun and the smell of ocean and dry earth. The convent of the Descalces Poor Clares was a sober whitewashed building hidden in a labyrinth of narrow streets near the waterfront. Sister Evelyn, an elderly woman with very clear eyes and bony hands, received us coldly. Talking about treasures and bequeathed objects seemed to make her deeply uncomfortable. The donation archives are private, little children, she said while continuing to pray her rosary. The sisters pray, they do not trade in worldly memories. It was then that Nathan, in a gesture that seemed rehearsed, took out a small gold medal from his pocket. It was not a valuable jewel, but a simple worn object. In the center, it had the same geometric motif that, according to the descriptions, adorned the edge of the plate. My grandmother, Lillian Callahan, was a lay sister here many years ago, Nathan said with a respectful voice I did not recognize in him. Before taking her vows, she belonged to the family. She left this to my mother. She said it was the key to mercy. Perhaps, sister, you know what it means. The elderly Sister Evelyn looked at the medal, and for a moment her mask of austerity cracked. A flash of recognition, and perhaps of sorrow, crossed her eyes. Lillian, she whispered, a tormented soul. Follow me. She led us through silent, cool corridors, where only the slight rustle of her habit and the distant singing of a choir could be heard. We arrived at a small chapter house with an ivory crucifix and shelves full of dusty files. She opened a drawer under the heavy oak table and pulled out not a plate, but a worn leather notebook. The Callahans have been complicated benefactors, she said without looking us in the eye. Donations with chains. Your grandmother, before she died, left this. She said that someday someone of her blood would come looking for the truth, not wealth, and that I should give it to them. She handed us the notebook. It is Rosa's diary. Rosa, I asked, taking the notebook carefully. A servant girl, Sister Evelyn whispered. A young woman in the house of your ancestors back in the 16th century. According to the family legend, she hid the plate that belonged to her family before they were expelled. That diary talks about where or with whom. Lillian asked me to keep it. Now it is yours. Take it away and do not come back. We left the convent with the notebook hidden under Nathan's jacket, feeling the weight of centuries and immediate danger. The lead was real, too real. And if we had found it, others could too. The trap was sprung that very night in the half-empty parking lot in front of our hotel, near the waterfront. We had gone to dinner distracted, euphoric about the discovery. Upon returning, two hooded figures emerged from behind a van. They did not say a word. One wielded an iron bar, the other a long knife. Brooke, get back, Nathan yelled, pushing me toward the car. A violent confrontation ensued. Nathan, despite his athletic build, was not a fighter. He blocked a blow from the bar with his arm, and I heard the horrible crunch. The man with the knife lunged at me. I reacted instinctively, throwing my purse with the notebook inside at his face. The impact threw him off balance. It was the second Nathan needed to, with a sudden movement, knee the first man in the groin and snatch the bar from him. He wielded it like a staff, keeping the two attackers at bay. A distant car alarm went off. The two men, badly injured but still dangerous, exchanged a glance and ran off into the darkness. Nathan, I ran toward him. He was holding his left arm against his body, his face contorted with pain. It is nothing, he lied, panting. A blow. The notebook. Here it is, I said, picking it up from the ground. It was intact. In the hotel room, with the door secured with a chair, I helped him take off his jacket and shirt. The bruise on his forearm was ugly, but there did not seem to be a break. While I looked for the first aid kit, he sat on the edge of the bed with his back to me, and that was when I saw it. They were not bruises from the fight. They were old scars, whitish but distinct against his skin. Several parallel, long lines crossing his back from his shoulders to his waist. Marks from severe physical discipline. I froze with the first aid kit in my hand. He noticed my silence and turned slightly, managing to see my expression in the wardrobe mirror. His face closed off. A mask of shame and ancient pain. Nathan, I managed to say with a broken voice. What? What is that? He lowered his head. For a long minute, only the hum of the minibar could be heard. Then he spoke in a voice so low I almost did not hear it. The family tradition was not just for the brides, Brooke. The words floated in the air, loaded with a new horror. I was thinking of the humiliating ritual, but he carried a much darker history in his flesh. My grandfather Harold was not just a collector, he continued, looking at his hands. He was a religious fanatic of the worst kind. He believed in redemption through suffering, physical suffering. When my father, when he did not meet his expectations or when he showed weakness, he himself. He paused, swallowing hard. And later, when my father left, or rather when he gave up, the target was me. Not always, only when I deserved to be straightened out. I felt the ground sinking beneath my feet. The strong, confident man who had taken me out of that house bore these marks, punishments inflicted in the name of tradition, honor, God knows what monstrosity. Your mother? I asked, almost breathless. Did she know? She always knew. She would close the study door and turn up the volume on the stereo. His voice was a threat of bitterness. Afterward, she would treat my wounds. She told me it was for my own good, that my grandfather wanted me to be strong like him. I approached and knelt in front of him, taking his hands. They were freezing. It was no longer just my battle. It was the battle of both of us against the same demons. That is why the plate, I said, suddenly understanding, is not just an inheritance, it is a symbol of all that, of his power, of his cruelty. To find it is to find the proof that all of that existed, he finished, finally looking up at me. His eyes were filled with ancient pain, but also fierce determination. Rose's diary, the plate, are pieces of the same truth. The truth that my family has hidden for generations, and now Vanessa and Eleanor want to find it, not to unearth it, but to bury it forever, and with it any possibility that we might be free. I cleaned and bandaged his arm in silence. Every gesture was a promise. Then I opened the old notebook. The handwriting was shaky, in Old Spanish sprinkled with Arabic words. Rosa spoke of her fear, of the big house where she served, of the master who looked at her with greedy eyes, and of her most prized treasure, a blue plate that was the only thing she had left of her home. She spoke of hiding it, where the water kisses the stone and the light sleeps at noon, in a place called the Eye of the Harbor. It is a place, I murmured, deciphering the calligraphy. It has to be a specific place. Nathan nodded, his physical and emotional pain transforming into an intense focus. Where the water kisses the stone. It could be a pier, an old wharf. The light sleeps at noon, a place in the shade, perhaps a chamber or a basement under a specific building. We have to find out, and we have to do it before they do. That night, huddled in the hotel bed, with his injured arm over me and the old diary on the nightstand, we were no longer just two newlyweds fighting for our place. We were accomplices, survivors of the same plague. And the hunt was now much more than an inheritance. It was an excavation into the rotten bowels of a family, and the only shovel we had was a 5-century-old diary written by a terrified girl. The game continued, but the rules had changed. We were no longer playing for money, but for our souls. Rosa's diary became our obsession. We spent days and nights in the hotel room with old and modern maps of Santa Barbara spread out on the bed, cross-referencing every word of the young servant girl. Where the water kisses the stone and the light sleeps at noon. The phrase haunted us. It could be the old pier, Nathan suggested, pointing to the map on his tablet. The ocean water kissing the stone pillars. But what about the light sleeping at noon? I objected. On a pier at noon there is full sun. It does not sleep. We dug through digital archives of local history. We read about old wharves, vanished customs houses, basements of historic buildings that reached down to the waterfront. Until on a forum of amateur historians I found a passing reference to a place called the Eye of the Harbor, a small vaulted chamber inside one of the old pier structures, used centuries ago as a warehouse by customs officers. According to a note, it received a ray of light through a peephole only at dawn. At noon it remained in total darkness. Where the light sleeps, it is there, I said with sudden certainty. On the pier itself, but inside. We could not go in broad daylight. Too many people. We decided to go at dawn when the city was still asleep. The anxiety was a knot in my stomach. Every shadow on the street seemed to hide Vanessa or one of her thugs. Nathan wore his arm in a discreet sling. I had the diary and a small headlamp in my pocket. The early morning air was cool, heavy with the smell of the damp earth of the ocean. The old pier with its iron arches illuminated by orange streetlights, loomed over the water, black and silent. At the base of the first pillar on the harbor side, we found a rotten wooden door, almost invisible among the weeds and graffiti. It was locked with a modern rusty padlock. Nathan pulled some bolt cutters from his jacket. The crack of the metal breaking sounded like a gunshot in the stillness. We pushed the door, which creaked in protest. Mossy stone stairs descended into the darkness and the smell of mud and abandonment. I turned on the flashlight. The chamber was small, round, with old brick walls. The floor was packed earth, and in the center, on a flat stone that looked like a makeshift altar, was an object covered by a shred of rotten cloth. With my heart pounding against my ribs, I approached. Nathan stayed at the entrance keeping watch. With a trembling hand I pulled back the cloth, and there it was. It was not a perfect plate. It had a fine crack running from the edge to near the center, repaired anciently with a golden glue that looked like sealing wax, but it was unmistakable. The porcelain of a deep cobalt blue, almost black in the dim light, with intricate geometric motifs and a Kufic Arabic inscription surrounding the edge. The blue porcelain plate. I touched it. It was cold. After 5 centuries hidden, after decades of being a family legend, it was there beneath my fingers. "We have it," I whispered in disbelief. At that moment, a shadow filled the entrance of the stairs. "You have it." "I am afraid not, little sister-in-law." Vanessa was not alone. Behind her, blocking the exit, was the bulky silhouette of the man with the iron bar. His face was still swollen from the previous encounter. In his right hand gleamed the short blade of a switchblade. "How romantic," Vanessa said, descending the steps with feline elegance. "Finding the family treasure at dawn. Just in time for breakfast. Pass it to me, Brooke." I stood up, protecting the plate with my body, It is not yours, Vanessa. Everything in this family is mine, she replied, her eyes shining with greed and hatred. Or it will be. Mom had everything planned. Even that you would get here. I just had to let your ingenuity or your desperation bring you and follow you. Thank you for the detective work. Now the prize. Do not give it to her, Brooke, Nathan said, positioning himself next to me. His body tense as a spring despite his injured arm. Oh, Nathan, always the gentleman. Vanessa made a face of contempt. Derek, would you take care of my brother? Without killing him for now, just get him out of the way. The bulky man, Derek, advanced. Nathan prepared for the attack, but he was at a disadvantage with a useless arm. The fight was brief and brutal. Derek was strong and knew his trade. He dodged a clumsy blow from Nathan and stabbed him in the thigh with the knife during the struggle. Nathan fell with a grunt of pain, clutching his leg, which was oozing blood between his fingers. Nathan, I screamed, taking a step toward him. Stay where you are, Vanessa ordered, now only a meter away from me. She held out her hand. The plate or Derek injures him further. I saw the agony on Nathan's face, the dark blood soaking his pants. There was no choice. With rage and despair, I placed the blue porcelain plate in her hands. She held it as if it were the World Cup, a triumphant and deranged smile illuminating her face. It is uglier than I thought, she murmured. But her eyes devoured it. But it is the key to everything. Goodbye, little siblings. Enjoy your poverty. And with that, she turned around and climbed the stairs, followed by Derek, who, passing by Nathan, gave him a brutal kick in the ribs. The wooden door slammed shut. We heard the sound of something heavy dragging against it. They had locked us in. I knelt beside Nathan, pressing desperately on the wound on his thigh with a piece of the rotten cloth. I am fine, it is not deep, he panted, but his paleness betrayed the truth. We have to get out of here, I said, searching with the flashlight. The door was our only way out. We struggled, we pushed. It did not give. It was blocked from the outside. The air was beginning to grow thin. Panic, cold and sticky, began to creep up my throat. It was then that, in our struggle, the beam of the flashlight illuminated a hole in the wall behind the stone where the plate had been. A small hole, and inside something gleamed faintly. I reached my hand in. I pulled out a small leather case rotted by moisture. Upon opening it, inside there was a ring, a simple gold men's wedding band, and engraved on the inside was an inscription. For Harold, my eternal love. Lillian, 1952. It was the grandfather's wedding ring. What was it doing here? We did not have time to think. From above, through the rotten wood, we began to smell smoke. A thick, acrid smoke. Vanessa had not only locked us in, she had started a fire at the entrance. The fire, Nathan coughed, trying to stand up. Desperation gave us supernatural strength. Together we charged against the door with our shoulders over and over again, while the smoke seeped in thicker and thicker, making us cough and our eyes water. With a final crack of brittle wood and twisted iron, the door gave way. We stumbled out into the gray light of dawn, just in time to see a small pyre of trash and wood burning in front of the entrance. Vanessa and Derek were gone. Nathan was limping, losing blood. I supported him. There was no time to lose. We were lucky. A night taxi was passing down the nearby street. We flagged it down, shouting, "To the nearest hospital, fast," I ordered, pushing Nathan inside. During the ride, while Nathan bled in the back seat, I looked at the ring I was still clenching in my fist. For Harold, my eternal love. Lillian. Lillian, Nathan's grandmother, the lay sister, the one who had hidden the diary. And this ring, why was it with the plate? It was another clue, another symbol. In my other hand, without thinking, I toyed with my own wedding ring, the simple silver band Nathan had put on me just a few weeks ago. I spun it. I had never taken it off, not even to sleep. I had never looked inside. An absurd, terrible idea pushed its way through the panic and worry. Slowly I took off the ring, raising it to the faint dawn light coming through the window. Inside the silver, finely engraved, there were some letters. I had always assumed they would be our initials or the date. I leaned in closer, squinting. They were not our initials, they were two names. Harold, Lillian. A shiver that had nothing to do with the morning cold ran through me from head to toe. It was not my ring. It was a family ring, the same design perhaps as the one I had just found, passed from generation to generation for the new wife. I wore on my finger, like a mark of ownership, the names of the original patriarchs of this nightmare. The officiant who married us, an old friend of Nathan's family, had put it on me with a beatific smile. It was all part of the ritual of control. Even our marriage was branded with the iron of their history. Nathan, I said, my voice trembling, my ring. Pale and with his eyes closed from the pain, he opened them with effort. I looked at the ring I held out to him. His expression broke down into pure horror. No, he whispered, that old custom. I thought it was no longer done. I swear I did not know, Brooke. I believed him. His shock was genuine. It was another layer of the poisoned onion, another thread of the web his family had woven around us without us knowing. The ring, the plate, the ritual, the scars, all connected. We arrived at the emergency room of Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. While they attended to Nathan, I stayed in the waiting room, the foreign ring clenched in my hand, my husband's name on my lips, and a new rage, cold and clear as crystal, solidifying inside me. I was no longer scared, I was no longer just hurt, I was furious. Vanessa had the plate, she had the key to the inheritance, but I had something else. I had the truth, fragmented but real, about the rotten foundations of the Callahans, and I had the determination to use that truth not to win their game, but to demolish their board completely. When the doctor came out to tell me that Nathan was stable, that the wound was not serious, and that they would keep him under observation, I nodded silently. Then I put my ring, Harold and Lillian's ring, back on my finger. Let it be worn. It would be a constant reminder and a talisman of revenge. The game was not over. It had merely entered a new phase. And I, Brooke Callahan, was no longer the bride hoping to be accepted. I was the one who was going to bring down the house. Starting with the foundations. Nathan was discharged the next day, with his thigh bandaged and a cane for support. The wound was superficial, but the message was profound. Vanessa and Eleanor played to win regardless of the cost. It was no longer just a treasure hunt. It was a war of attrition. In the heavy silence of our hotel, with the blinds drawn, I made a decision. We could not keep playing defensively, chasing clues while they attacked us. We needed information from the inside, and I remembered someone. Claire. Claire Callahan, a distant cousin of Nathan. The black sheep of the family, as he had once described her to me with a certain tone of pity, had dared to publicly denounce the family's archaic practices years ago, during a dispute over a minor inheritance. Eleanor had banished her, cutting her off from all contact and resources. She lived in a modest neighborhood of Santa Barbara, working as a ceramics restorer. The irony escaped no one. Claire will not talk to us, Nathan doubted as I looked for her number in an old family group chat. She thinks all Callahans are the same, and after yesterday she is partly right. We are not like them, I said firmly. And she is the only one who has tried to fight Eleanor from the inside. We need her hatred and her knowledge. Claire agreed to see us with evident distrust in a small workshop cluttered with broken ceramic pieces and smells of glaze and solvent. She was a woman in her 40s with brown hair tied in a messy bun and clay-stained hands. Her eyes, the same hazel color as Nathan's, scrutinized us, giving nothing away. So the famous Brooke, she said without offering a seat, the one who unleashed hell. And Nathan, the repentant crown prince. To what do I owe the honor? Do you need me to restore some stolen antique? We need you to help us defeat Eleanor, I said bluntly. Claire let out a dry, humorless laugh. Defeat Eleanor? Impossible. She is a hydra. You cut off one head and two new intrigues grow back. I tried it and look where I am. What makes you think that you, a newcomer, can achieve it? Because I have this, I replied and placed my phone on the workbench, opening the photo gallery. They were the images I had feverishly taken of the blue plate in the seconds I had it in my hands before Vanessa arrived. Sharp, high-resolution photographs showing every detail of the ceramic, every crack, every stroke of the Arabic inscription. Claire approached, and her skepticism shattered in the face of professional curiosity. She took the phone, zooming in on the images. It is it, the mythical plate. You found it. Then her expression darkened. But you no longer have it. Vanessa stole it from us yesterday, Nathan confirmed with a tired voice. Predictable, Claire murmured, but her fingers slid across the screen, studying every centimeter. Suddenly she stopped. She enlarged a section near the center, where the crack repaired with the gold formed an irregular line. "Do you see this?" she asked, pointing with a dirt-caked fingernail. "The sealing wax is not uniform. In this area it looks thicker, as if there was something underneath, or as if it had been used to hide something, not just to repair." "What could it be?" I asked hopefully. "I do not know. But in ancient ceramics sometimes messages, reliquaries, small things were hidden. If this plate was so important and so cursed." She left the sentence hanging and looked at us. "What do you know about its history? About the real one?" We told her about the diary of Rosa, the servant girl. Claire nodded, as if pieces of a puzzle were fitting together. "Rosa, that name sounds familiar to me. From old rumors, but there is more. My grandmother, your grandfather Harold's sister, Nathan, she used to tell me things when I was a girl, scary things. She said the plate was not a trophy, but a confession, that it had a stain that would not come out, a blood stain." I looked at the photos again. In the area of the thicker sealing wax, the cobalt blue seemed to have a slightly darker, almost violet tone. Could be a lighting effect. "Oh, we need to recover the plate," Claire said suddenly, with a spark of her old fire in her eyes. "Or at least get close enough to see what is under that sealing wax. If it is proof, if it is the confession my grandmother talked about, period. It is your only royal flush against Eleanor. Without it, you are just two rich kids fighting over another inheritance." "Vanessa will lock it up," Nathan said. "Vanessa is impulsive and arrogant," Claire replied. "She has the trophy. Will she want to rub it in someone's face, her mother's to prove her worth, or yours to finish off the humiliation? Can you provoke her?" She was right. That same night, Nathan, from a fake social media account, left a comment on a public photo of Vanessa at an exclusive club. "Does the blue plate shine as much as they say? Or is it just painted glass? Congratulations, Vanessa. You finally did something for yourself." It was a crude hook but perfect for her ego. She took the bait. The next morning I received a private message from an unknown number. Attached a video. Vanessa in what looked like the main living room of the San Francisco house, holding the blue plate with white gloves. Her smile was one of absolute triumph. "Do you want to see your prize up close, losers?" The message read, "You can come admire it this afternoon at 5. Just the two of you. If you bring anyone else or the police, I smash it to pieces. Eleanor is not here. It is my moment." It was an obvious trap, but it was also the opportunity we needed. Claire offered to come, hiding nearby, not as backup, but as a witness and with a long-range camera. At exactly 5 o'clock we rang the doorbell of the Callahan house. Vanessa herself opened the door in a tight dress and a glass of champagne in her hand. She smelled of cheap victory. Punctual. "How well-mannered," she said, letting us in. "Go ahead." It is in the living room in its place of honor. The blue plate rested on a black velvet cushion in the center of the large dining table. The afternoon light, filtered through the tall windows, made its deep blue and the golden line of the crack shine. Vanessa paced around like a lioness around her prey. "It is beautiful, isn't it?" she said with feigned sweetness. "Think that you had it in your hands and you let it slip away. How clumsy." "Congratulations, Vanessa," Nathan said with a neutral voice. "You won." "Of course I won," she erupted, slamming the glass down on the table. "I always win. I am the strong one, the one who deserves all this. Not you with your cheap morality and your plebeian wife." She pointed at the plate. "This is power, the power that Mom and I will have, and you will be a distant memory, a mistake of the family." While she spoke, I had slowly approached the table, studying the plate. From this distance I clearly saw what Claire had pointed out. In the area of the thicker sealing wax there was a very fine line, an almost imperceptible edge. It was not part of the repair. It looked like the edge of a small sealed hidden compartment. "Do you know what the old sister Evelyn told me?" Vanessa said, continuing her monologue. "That this plate had a secret, some nonsense about a letter, as if I cared. What matters is that it is mine." "A letter?" I asked, trying to make my voice sound only curiously disinterested. "Yes, some stupidity hidden by a hysterical maid centuries ago. Blood and tears, dramatic and boring. Mom said it was garbage, but A cruel smile formed on her lips. "I like to break things, especially things that people value." Before I could react, she picked up the plate with both hands, raised it above her head, and with a wild cry of triumph, smashed it against the marble edge of the fireplace. The sound was deafening, a sharp dry crunch of ceramic shattering into 1,000 fragments that scattered all over the marble floor. Nathan and I stood paralyzed, horrified. She had destroyed it. She had destroyed the inheritance, the symbol, everything. Vanessa was panting, her eyes shining with a perverse ecstasy. But then, among the blue and gold fragments, something caught my attention. It was not just ceramic. Where the thickest sealing wax had been, there was now a small tight cylinder of dark parchment tied with a blackened thread. It had survived the destruction by being hidden within the body of the plate itself. Vanessa saw it at the same time. With a growl, she lunged at the fragments and grabbed the cylinder. "No!" I screamed, throwing myself at her. It was a brief and violent struggle. She scratched me. We wrestled. The cylinder fell to the floor and rolled. Nathan, limping, positioned himself between Vanessa and me. She, blind with rage, pushed him. He fell on the ceramic fragments, cutting his hands. But in the confusion, I had managed to put a foot on the parchment cylinder. "Drop it, you witch!" Vanessa shrieked, trying to hit me. At that moment, the living room door burst open. It was Claire. She was not alone. She brought with her an older, timid-looking man with a folder under his arm, the former family archivist, another outcast by Eleanor. "Enough, Vanessa," Claire said with an authority that surprised everyone. "The show is over." Vanessa, seeing her banished cousin, seemed to lose her confidence for a moment. "What are you doing here?" "Watching you destroy the proof that could have given you all the power," Claire replied with contempt. She turned to me. "Pick it up, Brooke." I waited and then slowly bent down and picked up the parchment cylinder. It was surprisingly intact. With trembling fingers, I untied the blackened thread. It was not thread, it was a fine lock of braided blonde and gray hair. I unrolled the parchment. It was small, the size of a postcard, and was written, not with ink, but with a dark brown rusted substance that formed shaky and desperate strokes. The writing was in Old Spanish, but it was understandable. "I, Rosa of Cordova, servant in this house of horrors, write with my blood so that the world may know. Harold, the elder, was not content with stealing my inheritance. This plate. He violated me in the worst way. From that violation a son was born who was taken away and presumed dead. This plate bears the blood of my lineage and his. The fortress of the Callahans was built on my violation and that of others. I curse this house and all those who, knowing this, remain silent. May this truth written with my blood haunt them until the end of days." A deathly silence filled the room. Even Vanessa seemed shocked, looking at the parchment as if it were a live snake. It was not just a confession, it was the birth certificate of a bastard line, the original sin of the family. Eleanor knew it, that is why she wanted the plate to destroy this proof. Vanessa, in her arrogant stupidity, had done it for her. "Now I understand," the old archivist murmured, breaking the silence. "That is why Harold disinherited his own brother Theodore, not because of the theft of the plate, but because Theodore must have discovered this, because he threatened to tell it." "And Michael," Nathan said, standing up with difficulty. "Michael, the lawyer, handled all this, the wills, the cover-ups." Claire nodded gravely. "Michael is Eleanor's shadow. Without him she cannot move. He is the one who buries the legal bodies." "We have to find him," I said, folding the parchment very carefully. It was more powerful than any plate. It was pure dynamite. If he disappears or turns against her. "Michael will not turn against her," the archivist said, shaking his head. "He is too compromised. But there are rumors that lately he is nervous, that Eleanor asks him for things that go beyond the legal, that he has been diverting funds from trusts, laundering money. I fear for him." "Do you fear that Eleanor will get rid of him?" I asked, frozen. "She gets rid of everything that is left over," Claire said, looking at Vanessa, who, now pale and trembling, was beginning to understand the magnitude of her mistake, or of everything that can speak. Vanessa looked at us, and for the first time I saw something akin to genuine fear in her eyes. Not fear of us, but of her mother. "I have to go," she murmured and ran out of the living room, leaving behind the battlefield of shattered ceramic. Claire approached. "The parchment is good, but it is the word of a dead woman centuries ago against Eleanor's machine. We need Michael, or we need his books, the accounts, the proof of what he does now. Where is his office? Nathan asked. In the financial district, but they will not be there. Michael is meticulous. If he has something compromising, he will keep it close. Very close. Perhaps at his house. Oh, the archivist hesitated. There is an old flat, an apartment in the name of a shell company in the historic district. Harold used it for his discreet encounters. Michael is the only one besides Eleanor who has a key. I looked at Nathan. His gaze reflected the same determination I felt. The game had changed again. We were not looking for a treasure. We were looking for a man, and the truth that could bury a dynasty. We had Rosa's blood. Now we needed Michael's ink, and time we knew was running out for everyone. The apartment in the historic district was a nest of dust and shadows. A small dark study with shelves full of files and the stale smell of old paper and fear. There was no sign of Michael, only files that narrated in cold legal language decades of cover-ups, purchases of properties under false names, transfers to tax havens, confidentiality agreements with doctors, with journalists, with former employees of the family. It was the legal framework of Eleanor's reign of terror, but it was not enough. We needed the man. He has gone into hiding, Nathan murmured, running a finger through the dust of an empty desk. He knows my mother gets rid of inconvenient witnesses. My phone buzzed. A message from Claire. Derek's Corner, bar near the harbor. Old sailor dive. Michael goes sometimes to drown his sorrows. Careful. Dangerous place. Derek, the thug who injured Nathan. The bar must be his lair. It was madness to go, but it was the only lead. Derek's Corner was exactly what its name suggested. A low and dark establishment next to the docks, with dirty windows and a beer neon sign flickering erratically. The air smelled of salt, spilled beer and latent violence. Upon entering, a few hostile glances locked onto us. Nathan, still limping, stepped in front of me. I recognized one of the men at the bar, Derek's partner, the one with the iron bar. We are looking for Michael Bennett, Nathan said with a voice that pretended to be firm, but betrayed tension. The man at the bar smiled, showing broken teeth. The little lawyer is upstairs in the back room, but he is not sociable. We climbed a narrow wooden staircase that creaked. The back room door was ajar. A smell of cheap whiskey and vomit hit us. Michael was sitting on the floor, leaning against a wall, with his tie undone and a vacant stare. There were empty bottles around. He was crying silently, convulsively. Michael, Nathan said. The lawyer looked up. His bloodshot eyes took a moment to focus on us. When they did, they showed no surprise, only an infinite exhaustion and a deep fear. Nathan Brooke, his voice was a hoarse shred. You came for me to finish me off. Tell Eleanor I am sorry that I could not take it anymore. We do not come on behalf of Eleanor, I said, closing the door behind us. We come for the truth. He let out a bitter laugh that turned into a coughing fit. The truth is a cesspool, and I have been swimming in it for too long. He drank straight from a half-full bottle. She is going to destroy me. I know it. How she caused your father's death, Nathan? The air froze in my lungs. What? Nathan whispered, turning pale. Your father did not die of a heart attack, Michael mumbled, letting his head fall back against the wall. He was starting to ask questions about the disappearing money, about the fake wills. Eleanor could not allow it. He was weak, but he was your father, the legal heir. She arranged for his death in a way that looked natural. I signed the death certificate. On her orders, like I have signed everything. He looked at us with eyes full of tears of self-pity and terror. And now she is coming for you, Nathan. For me. Why do you have the plate? Vanessa won. Vanessa is an idiot. Michael spat with sudden energy. She destroyed the physical evidence. Yes, but the sin is still there in the DNA. In you, you are the male heir, the legitimate one. As long as you are sane and free, you are a danger. She cannot disinherit you easily, unless you are not in a condition to inherit. A shiver ran down my spine. What does she want to do? I asked, though I already feared the answer. A psychiatric evaluation, Michael whispered, leaning in as if to confide a deadly secret. Tomorrow at the family meeting, a very expensive family friend doctor will come. He will diagnose a psychotic break induced by the stress of marriage and obsession with conspiracy theories about the family. Paranoid schizophrenia. It is perfect. With that diagnosis, plus my power of attorney and the support of the family council, Eleanor will be able to declare you incapacitated. Send you to a very discreet private clinic, from which you never leave. And Brooke, his gaze clouded by alcohol, settled on me with pity. The wife of a madman with no resources will be easy to annul, or to suffer an accident. The crudeness of the plan, its cruel precision, left us speechless. It was not just a fight for the inheritance, it was a plan to literally erase us from existence. And you? Nathan asked with a voice trembling with rage. What do you gain from this? My life, Michael shouted desperately. She has things on me, things worse than signing fake certificates. If I do not do this, she will throw me to the wolves, or give me the same treatment she gave your father. He collapsed sobbing again. I am trapped. We are all trapped in her web. Nathan and I exchanged a look. This broken man was not an ally, he was a witness. A terrified witness, but perhaps the only one who could point to the corpse in the closet. You have to help us, Michael, I said, kneeling in front of him. You have to come to the meeting tomorrow and tell the truth. I cannot, he moaned. She will destroy me. She is already doing it, Nathan replied harshly. Tomorrow after using you she will not need you anymore. You know it. Help us and we will help you. Testimony in exchange for protection. It is your only way out. Michael looked at us like a cornered animal deciding which way to jump. Finally he nodded, a weak, hesitant movement. I have things in a safe deposit box. Account numbers, transfers, recordings of conversations with Eleanor. It is just in case someday. He did not finish the sentence. The key is at my house under the back door mat. It is ridiculous. I know. The address, he wrote down the address. It was a huge risk to trust him, but we had no choice. We will go for the box, Nathan said. You go home, take a shower and prepare for tomorrow. You have to look credible. We left the bar feeling the thug's stares pinned to our backs. In the car the tension was palpable. We have to separate, Nathan said suddenly. I will go for the safe deposit box. It is more dangerous. You go back to the hotel. Meet up with Claire. You will be safer there. No, I protested. We go together. Brooke, if something happens to me, I need you to be safe. For you to have Claire's testimony, whatever she has, please. I yielded. I dropped Nathan off near the bank and took a taxi back to the hotel. A feeling of dread, of a horrible premonition, would not leave me. Upon arriving at the room, Claire was not there. Only a note. Went to pick something up. Back in 30 minutes. Do not open the door for anyone. See, the minutes passed like hours. I called Nathan's cell phone. Out of coverage. Panic began to close around my throat. Then there was a knock at the door. A sharp, authoritative knock. Claire. I asked without opening. Room service, ma'am. You have a package. I had not ordered anything. I peeked through the peephole. A man in a hotel bellhop uniform was holding a small box. I hesitated, but the uniform looked legitimate. I opened the door just enough. In that instant, a hand with a cloth soaked in a chemical liquid covered my mouth and nose from behind. The bellhop pushed the door. I struggled, choking, but the world began to spin, to blur. The last things I saw were Vanessa's smiling face, peering from behind the man holding me, and the hallway ceiling tilting impossibly before darkness swallowed me completely. I woke up with a pounding headache and a dry mouth. I was in a dark room on the cold concrete floor. It was not the hotel. It smelled of dampness, oil and gasoline, a warehouse or a garage. My hands were tied behind my back with plastic zip ties. Finally, said Vanessa's voice. She was sitting on a folding chair under the single hanging light bulb. Beside her, Derek, the thug, toyed with his switchblade. I thought the substance had left you dumb. Where is Nathan? I managed to say with a hoarse voice. Worried about your Prince Charming. Do not worry. Soon he will be where he belongs, in a padded cell, drugged to the eyeballs. Or perhaps if Mom softens up, at the bottom of the harbor. She stood up and paced. You, on the other hand, are a more immediate problem. A meddlesome pest. Eleanor says we eliminate you cleanly, but I think you should suffer a little first. For the trouble you gave me, for the plate, for everything. Derek approached, the switchblade gleaming under the light. Fear, pure and animal, paralyzed me. But beneath the fear, Rose's rage, The rage of all those who came before boiled. I would not surrender. Your mother is going to betray you, Vanessa, I said, desperately looking for something to destabilize her. Michael told us everything. The plan to lock up Nathan. What makes you think that once he is out and I am gone, she will not get rid of you? You are unpredictable. A risk like your father. Vanessa stopped dead. What do you know about my father? I know he did not die of a heart attack. I know Eleanor was responsible for causing his death because he started asking questions like you are doing now, like you did with the parchment. You are a problem for her, Vanessa. And she solves problems forever. I saw doubt cross her face, mixing with her natural paranoia. Derek looked at me expecting an order. Shut up, Vanessa hissed. But her certainty had cracked. Michael has proof of everything. And if anything happens to Nathan or me, those proofs will come to light. Your mother will fall and you will fall with her. Unless what? She asked suspiciously. Unless you take the first step, unless you help us, unless you testify against her. You could save something, your freedom at least. It was a risky calculation. Appealing to her survival instinct, to her egocentrism. She considered it. For a second I saw the temptation in her eyes. Then she hardened them. No, I win with her. I have always won with her. You are just trash that needs to be taken out. Derek, do it. Derek lunged. I closed my eyes, bracing for the pain. The crash was deafening. A dull thud, the sound of metal against flesh and bone, and a grunt of pain. It was not mine. I opened my eyes. Derek lay on the floor unconscious, his head bleeding. Behind him, holding a lug wrench and panting, was Claire, and next to her, holding a phone with the screen lit up, was the old archivist. You! Vanessa shouted, stepping back. Enough, Vanessa, Claire said with a firm voice. She approached me and with a cutter freed my hands. I am sorry we were late. We had to follow them. How? I tracked you through the mobile locator, Claire explained. Nathan gave me your cloud password just in case. Come, we have to go. You are not going anywhere. Vanessa reached for something in her purse, probably a weapon. The archivist raised the phone. On the screen played a blurry but clear video, a black and white security recording from a decade ago. It showed the kitchen of the San Francisco house. Eleanor from behind handling a teapot. Then, pouring the contents into a cup, she brought it to a man sitting at the table with his head in his hands. It was Nathan's father. He took it listlessly. Eleanor remained standing, watching him drink with an expression of cold expectation. The date and time blinked in the corner. It is the old security system, the archivist said with a trembling voice. The one Eleanor ordered me to destroy. I kept a copy just in case. Vanessa stared at the video, her face a mask of horror and comprehension. It was the confirmation of what I had only insinuated. Her mother was responsible for the death, and she had been her accomplice. Let us go, Brooke, Claire said, taking my arm. Vanessa did not try to stop us. She stood motionless under the light bulb, staring at the phone, while we ran out of the warehouse into the cool night, where a car with the engine running was waiting for us. Inside was Nathan, pale but unharmed, with a metal box by his side. The safe deposit box, he said with a tired smile. It has everything, Michael was right, including a draft of the psychiatric commitment order signed by the doctor dated for tomorrow. He hugged me tightly. Claire got behind the wheel. And now? I asked, trembling with adrenaline and relief. Now, Nathan said, and his voice had a new tone of fierce calm. We prepare our presentation for the family meeting tomorrow. We have Rose's testimony, Michael's accounts, and the video. We have the truth. Tomorrow we hand it back to my mother entirely. The boardroom of the family corporation in the financial district was cold and silent as a tomb. Under the huge mahogany table, around which decisions that ruined lives for generations had been made, sat the members of the council, distant uncles, second cousins, all with faces of stone and loyalties bought by Eleanor. She presided over the table dressed in severe black with an expression of authoritative sorrow. To her right, a neat-looking man with tortoiseshell glasses, Philip Grant, toyed with his pen. To her left, Michael's chair was empty. Vanessa, pale and with deep bags under her eyes, sat in a corner avoiding everyone's gaze. Eleanor had begun her speech, a masterpiece of tear-jerking manipulation. And due to the recent tragic and erratic events, The mental health of my son, my only son, has severely deteriorated. It is with a broken heart that, as matriarch and thinking of the good of the family and our businesses, I must request an evaluation of his capacity. Dear Philip Grant, an eminent psychiatrist, has reviewed the case and agrees on the need for an immediate intervention for Nathan's sake. The doctor nodded gravely. The symptoms described, obsession with conspiracy theories, paranoid behavior, episodes of aggression, are very concerning. With the council's authorization, I recommend admission and evaluation in a specialized center where he can receive the treatment he needs. At that moment, the double doors of the room burst open. How timely! Just when they were going to bury me alive, Nathan walked in firmly, without a trace of his limp. I was by his side. We wore simple clothes, but in our hands, I with a folder of documents and he with a small portable projector, we were the antithesis of the madman they were describing. The room held its breath. Eleanor stood up, her eyes blazing. How dare you interrupt? This is a private council meeting. And you, Brooke, have no voice here. I believe I do, I said. And my voice rang clear in the silence. Because what I am going to show you concerns the legitimacy of this entire council, and the person who presides over it. Guards! Eleanor called out. Let them speak, Eleanor, said an elderly, trembling voice from the other end of the table. It was Uncle Theodore, Harold's younger brother, a nonagenarian man whom everyone believed senile and only invited out of protocol. His eyes, however, shone with a sudden lucidity. I have waited a long time to hear this conversation. Eleanor turned pale. Nathan nodded to the old man with respect. Thank you, Uncle. We will start at the beginning. At the true beginning. He pointed at me. I opened the folder and took out the first page, an enlarged copy of Rosa's parchment with its translation into modern Spanish at the bottom. This is a statement written in blood by Rosa of Cordova, a servant girl in the house of this family in the 16th century. In it, she accuses the first Harold Callahan of a grave violation, and declares that the son born of that act was taken away and presumed dead. The famous blue porcelain plate, the centerpiece of this macabre inheritance, was hers. It was stolen. The Callahan fortune began with a violation and a theft. And every generation has covered up this original sin. A murmur of shock ran across the table. Eleanor offered a dismissive smile. An old piece of paper. A slander from a maid dead for centuries. Is that your great proof? No, Nathan said. It is just the prologue. The proof that this family has always believed it can possess, violate, and silence whoever it wants, like they tried to do with Brooke, like they did with my father. He turned on the projector. An image was projected onto the white wall behind Eleanor. It was a clear photograph of the draft of the psychiatric commitment order with Dr. Philip Grant's and Eleanor's signatures. Dated for today. Your plan, Mom. To declare me insane to keep everything. How much did she pay you, Doctor? The psychiatrist shifted uncomfortably. No, I just... Shut up. Eleanor cut him off, but her voice had lost its firmness. But the original plan was even better. I continued, changing the image. Now bank statements were visible, transfers from family trust accounts to shell companies in offshore locations, all authorized by Michael Bennett on Eleanor's orders, diverting funds from the inheritance that was supposed to belong to everyone for her personal benefit. Michael kept everything. Just in case. Where is Michael? An alarmed cousin asked. With the police, Nathan said, giving a full statement. In exchange for protection, he has told everything about the money laundering, the bribes, and the circumstances of my father's death. The silence was absolute. Eleanor did not even blink, but a fine film of sweat appeared on her temple. My husband died of a heart attack, she said word by word. Nathan pushed a button. The archivist's video began playing on the wall. The grainy black and white images were unmistakable. Eleanor in the kitchen, the teapot, the cup, the despondent man drinking. Her watching. The date. A heart-wrenching scream filled the room. It was not Eleanor's. It was Vanessa's, who stood up, pointing at her mother with a trembling finger. It was true what she said. It was true. You caused his death, she screamed. Her accumulated hysteria exploding. And then you used me. You made me do horrible things just to prove to you that I was strong like you. But you only wanted power. Always just power. You would have even thrown me away. Vanessa, control your hysteria. Eleanor hissed, but her mask was cracking. The council looked at her in horror, backing away in their chairs as if she were contagious. What else, Vanessa? Nathan asked in a soft but implacable voice. Tell us everything. And Vanessa, broken, spite and terrified, spoke. She spoke of how Eleanor bribed professors, of how she made harassment complaints against family members disappear, of how she planned the theft of the plate, of the attempt to tamper with the drink at the meeting, of the order to kidnap and eliminate me. It was a torrent of confessions, a total collapse that painted before the astonished eyes of the council the portrait of a person consumed by power, not a matriarch. When she finished, slumped and crying, the room was in a deathly silence. Eleanor stood alone, isolated. Her elegance had turned into a cadaverous rigidity. She looked first at Nathan, then at me. In her eyes there was no repentance, only an infinite hatred and the cold realization of her defeat. All this is a farce put together by an ambitious woman and an unbalanced son, she said, but her voice lacked all conviction. No, Eleanor, Uncle Theodore said, standing up with effort. It is the truth. The truth that my brother Harold and you always tried to bury. The council has heard and seen enough. As the oldest member, I propose a motion. Eleanor Callahan is immediately removed from all positions in the family and its businesses. A judicial administrator will be appointed to review all her actions in coordination with the authorities to whom these proofs will be handed over. And as for the inheritance of my brother Harold, everyone held their breath. Any conditional clause based on tests or competitions is annulled. The main heir is and always was my great-nephew Nathan. Let him decide what to do with the legacy of this rotten house. Eleanor said nothing. She turned around and walked toward the door. No one stopped her. No one looked at her. As she crossed the threshold, she seemed to shrink, to transform into the old bitter shadow she had always been inside. The door closed behind her. Her reign was over. 3 months later, the afternoon light filtered through the stained glass windows of the small, simple church in the historic district of Santa Barbara. There were no powerful guests or lavish decorations. Only Claire, Uncle Theodore, a few true friends, and Julian the antiquarian acting as a witness. I wore a simple white dress without jewels, except for a new silver wedding band, smooth without inscriptions. Nathan placed it on my finger and I on his, while the parish priest, an elderly man with a kind smile, pronounced the words. This time they were our words, our vows free. Afterward, in a courtyard full of flowers, we toasted with local wine. Nathan addressed those present with his hand in mine. The Callahan inheritance was a burden of poison and gold. We have rejected the poison, and the gold does not belong to us. He paused. The Rosa Foundation, for the legal and psychological aid of women victims of domestic violence and abusive family systems, is officially established today. All the liquid assets of the family will go to it. The properties will be sold and the proceeds as well. This house will finally serve to heal, not to harm. There were no shouts of triumph, only a serene applause full of emotion. Claire hugged me, crying. Uncle Theodore nodded with tears in his eyes. Your grandmother Lillian, he told me, would be proud. She also tried to escape, but she could only hide the truth. You have been braver, you made it public. Nathan and I stood alone for a moment looking at the orange tree in the courtyard. The cycle of horror had been broken. Not with a humiliating bark, but with the truth spoken aloud. Not with submission, but with a rebellion that had demolished the foundations of the house from within. Are you ready, Brooke? He asked, stroking my cheek. For whatever comes, I replied, always smiling. And between the ancient walls of Santa Barbara, under the infinitely blue sky of California, we finally began our true life. Together, free. Did you enjoy this story? Leave a comment and hit the subscribe button to support the channel. More tales are on the way.